The year was 1976. The once proud baseball cathedral that was the pride of the American League had fallen into neglect and decay. The field where the likes of Joe DiMaggio, Jackie Robinson, and Stan Musial played was now covered with uncontrolled growth and knee-high weeds. Small trees had started to grow near the dugouts and infield area. Once grand stone carvings crumbled from age and vandalism. Graffiti sprawled along red brick walls. Much of the upper deck had been destroyed by fire, a fire set 5 years earlier by two young boys who snuck away from a nearby evangelical revival and went exploring inside the park. Shibe Park, renamed Connie Mack Stadium in 1950, sat abandoned for almost 6 years, becoming more than just an eyesore for the surrounding residential neighborhood. It had become a danger to the neighbors' health and safety. On July 13, 1976, on the day that the Major League All-Star Game was set to take place in the southern part of the city, construction crews demolished what remained of Connie Mack Stadium. The palatial cupola that once served as the legendary Connie Mack's office was now nothing more than a pile of rubble. Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball History. Don't forget to check out our merchandise. T-shirts, phone cases, masks, notebooks, mugs, and much more. Just go to tpublic.com and look for Philadelphia Baseball History. On October 1st, 1970, a near-capacity crowd of over 31,000 spectators packed the stands of Connie Mack Stadium. They came to say goodbye. On the year, attendance for Phillies games averaged less than 9,000 fans per game. But aside from weekend games or special events such as opening day, the Phillies struggled to attract more than 5,000 fans to see the team battling to stay out of the NL East basement. In the last series at Connie Mack Stadium, the Phils battled the only team worse than them, the Montreal Expos, a team they beat in the standings by a mere half game. In the 2 games leading up to the ballpark's finale, the Phillies barely attracted more than 1,000 fans. Certainly, the 31,000 fans who came to the October 1st game were not there to see quality baseball. And in a 2-1 extra inning victory, the most excitement fans witnessed was a heated argument by Larry Bowa. But once Tim McCarver scored the winning run in the bottom of the 10th, all hell broke loose. Fans stormed out of the grandstands and onto the field. Some fans began ripping up the wooden seats from the stands. Film from the aftermath of the game showed fans carrying rows of chairs across the field and out of the stadium. It was an ignominious end to a ballpark that hosted 2 All-Star games and 8 World Series. But Shibe Park wasn't always the embarrassment that it had become to the city of Philadelphia and to baseball. At one time, Shibe Park was a marvel of modern architecture. In the early days of the 20th century, it served as a glimpse of what professional baseball could be. Up until the park was built, professional baseball was played in rickety wooden structures on a field where the outfield boundary was often not very well defined. The Athletics' original home was Columbia Park, a field located on Columbia Avenue, now renamed after Philadelphia lawyer and civil rights activist Cecil B. Moore, and between 29th and 30th Streets. In 1901, when Ban Johnson chose Philadelphia as the largest city to receive a franchise in his new rival major league, the American League, the new Philadelphia Athletics team decided to attract fans by poaching the best players from their crosstown rivals, the Phillies. With the majority owner of the Phillies, Colonel John Rogers, known for his stinginess, it was not hard for the A's to lure away big names from the Phils, such as Nap Lajoie and Elmer Flick. But some thought that the A's payroll had become too bloated. John McGraw, upon being released as the manager of the Baltimore Orioles, famously charged the Athletics as being a white elephant, an expensive venture that could never turn a profit. Ironically, in 1905, the Athletics faced McGraw, who would become the manager of the New York Giants in the second ever World Series. Connie Mack had adopted the white elephant as the team's mascot and had a statuette of one presented to McGraw at home plate before the first pitch. For the first ever World Series game in Philadelphia, the wooden grandstands seated about 10,000 fans. But over 30,000 had shown up for the contest, forcing the Athletics to turn most of them away. Philadelphia's attendance that year was second only to the Chicago White Sox, with whom they had battled throughout the year for the American League pennant. The 1905 World Series convinced Ben Scheib, the A's largest shareholder and the business manager for the team, that a new ballpark was needed. Scheib went hunting for a new location and found an area in North Philly, just blocks away from the Phillies National League Park. It was on West Lehigh Avenue, between 20th and 21st Streets. At the time, no one really wanted the land, owing to the fact that the city maintained a hospital for contagious diseases nearby. But Scheib had gotten word that the city was about to close this hospital. The area was already serviced by streetcars along Broad Street and down Lehigh Avenue. There were also stations for the Pennsylvania and Reading Railroads nearby. It was an ideal location to bring fans to the games. Scheib concocted a series of transactions reminiscent of how Walt Disney bought up the swampland in Florida that became Disney World. If it had been known that the Athletics were looking to buy up land in order to build a new ballpark, the price would have been jacked up. So Scheib set up a series of strawmen, or phantom buyers, to snatch up the land on Lehigh Avenue and in turn transfer it to Scheib. He then engaged the services of William Steele & Sons, famous for building Philadelphia's first skyscraper, to design and build a new ballpark. It was to be the first steel-reinforced concrete stadium for baseball, a state-of-the-art accomplishment. The design of the ballpark was ornate, French Renaissance style. It had big arches and fancy stone facades that showcased baseball equipment in the same manner that French cathedrals displayed gargoyles and the likenesses of saints. There was even a fancy stone carved A, the Athletics' traditional logo. Scheib Park opened its gates on April 12, 1909, to an overflowing crowd as the A's faced their rivals from Boston. On opening day, 30,000 fans came to this new sports palace. The initial seating capacity of the ballpark was 23,000, with standing room along the outfield perimeter. That day, an estimated 7,000 fans lined the outfield, in a crowd held back by a rope, standing 7 people deep. Another 15,000 fans had to be turned away. Still more fans found nearby places to watch the game, such as on the rooftop of the neighboring Victorian-style row homes. It wasn't long before this new baseball cathedral exhibited baseball's grand finale. The A's returned to the World Series in 1910 to face the indomitable Chicago Cubs. Overflow crowds again acquired a vantage point from neighboring houses. This time, the Athletics proved victorious, bringing the first World Championship to Philadelphia. They would be victorious again in 1911 and in 1913, both of those series gaining revenge against John McGraw and his New York Giants. Over the years, the seating capacity would be expanded by adding outfield bleachers, an upper deck above the infield grandstand, and then an upper deck over the left field bleachers. But this being a neighborhood ballpark, the Athletics inevitably engaged in disputes with their residential neighbors. In the late 1930s, for example, the neighbors took the Athletics to court to try to stop them from installing light towers allowing for night baseball. The Athletics were represented by an able young lawyer, one Richard Dilworth, who not only won the case, but eventually went on to become the mayor of Philadelphia. The first night game in American League history was held in Philadelphia on May 16, 1939, with Cleveland beating the A's 8-1. The practice of neighbors allowing spectators to use their homes to view baseball games over the outfield fence also irritated the team. The neighbors along 20th Street had a perfect vantage point to watch games from the outfield. They eventually constructed bleachers on their rooftops and regularly charged fans less than it cost for a ticket to get inside the stadium. But the neighbors' tactics grew increasingly aggressive, at times accosting fans waiting in line to buy a ticket, offering the lower-priced alternative from their rooftops. After the A's sold off the players who made up their last World Championship team and attendance began to drop sharply, the Athletics extended the outfield wall in right field from a height of 12 feet to 32 feet. This blocked the view from the rooftop of the 20th Street neighbors. And while it was the work of the team's business manager, Jack Scheib, Ben Scheib's surviving son, the wall became known as Connie Mack's Spite Fence. By 1938, the neighboring Baker Bowl had become so dilapidated, and with its short right field porch unfit to host ball games in the home run era, that the Phillies abandoned it and became tenants of the Athletics at Shibe Park. Games could be seen at the ballpark almost every night throughout the baseball season. A little more than a decade after becoming new tenants, the Phillies hosted a World Series of their own at the ballpark. This time, in 1950, the exciting group of talented young players known as the Whiz Kids fell to the Yankees in a 4-game sweep. That year, by the way, Connie Mack, now aged 87, retired from baseball. The ballpark was renamed Connie Mack Stadium in his honor. But the neighborhood had deteriorated over the years, and with the rise of the suburbs after the Second World War, more and more people wanted to drive to the games. There was virtually no parking in the neighborhood for the increased traffic. The clubhouse and other facilities had become outdated. Visiting teams, most notably the Yankees, abhorred road trips to Philadelphia. As attendance continued to dwindle for the A's, it was hardly worth it for visiting American League teams to come to Philadelphia. When Connie Mack's sons from his first marriage, Earl and Roy, took over the team, they faced a financial crisis. Unlike the Phillies, the A's chose not to invest in developing new talent, choosing instead to cut costs to try to keep the team afloat. But a team perennially fighting to stay out of the American League basement failed to attract new fans. Having mortgaged the team, a payment came due. Earl and Roy could not make that payment. Seizing the moment, the Yankees took the opportunity to work behind the scenes to remove the A's from Philadelphia. They pressured Roy to sell the team to the Yankees' landlord, Arnold Johnson, who wanted to move the team to Kansas City. Although a group of local investors had been found and made a proposal to keep the team in Philadelphia, Johnson had offered Roy a job in the front office for himself and for his sons if he torpedoed the proposal. When the proposal from the Philadelphia investors came to a vote among American League owners, it failed by 1 vote. That vote came from Roy Mack himself, voting against the Athletics' own proposal. As part of the deal, the Phillies were persuaded to buy Connie Mack Stadium from the Athletics. Phillies owner Robert Carpenter was reluctant, as he was looking for a location to build a new Phillies stadium for his team. Still, he bought the stadium and made improvements. This included a brand new giant electronic scoreboard in right center field in 1956. Now, a multitude of sources make the claim that the Phillies bought the scoreboard from the Yankees, But this is an outright lie, often repeated in books and media, and even reported on by the Philadelphia Inquirer as late as 2009. The fact is, the Yankees bought their electronic scoreboard in 1950 and kept it past 1956. The Phillies scoreboard was brand new and not a Yankees hand-me-down. In the 1960s, the Phillies continued to make do by fixing up the deteriorating stadium. But they leveraged the city to build a new stadium, even threatening to move the team across the river to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at a site next to the Garden State Racetrack. The city eventually agreed to build a new, multi-use stadium to house both the Phillies and the Eagles, to be located in South Philadelphia. But until Veterans Stadium could be completed, the Phillies would have to use the crumbling Connie Mack Stadium. Their attendance suffered. Today, there are still those who lament the loss of Shibe Park or Connie Mack Stadium. They harbor romantic notions of yesteryear, when watching a ball game was an intimate experience in small ballparks that brought the fans close to the field and to the players. The older generation may express a fondness of going to Connie Mack Stadium with their fathers or grandfathers, but by the time the stadium had been abandoned and then demolished, it had far outlived its usefulness. It had fallen from a grand palace to an eyesore and a neighborhood hazard. And while thousands of fans walked off with seats and other pieces of the stadium on that fateful night in October of 1970, the Shibe Park facade sits in Cooperstown in the Hall of Fame Museum, a tribute to a bygone era.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If you have any ideas for topics that we can cover in the future, please let us know in the comments below. If you would like to see more of these videos, please consider becoming a patron through Patreon. Again, we'll have a link in the description box below.